America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to excuse me.
There you go. We're on. Turn on your mic. It's good. Thank God I monitor the chat. You know what I'm saying? I know you don't want to hear the explanation. You just want to hear the mic. I'm here. Good morning. Welcome to the Wake Up America show. Let's start this all over again. Thankful to have you tuning in to the program live. We appreciate all of our live listeners. And thank you to Erd's Mommy and to Levin214 for starting the unlock of the bonus content nice and early. We're already $20 towards the $60 goal. We appreciate that. All right. And also thank you, I guess, to Cecilia. Looking forward to the Libertarian Star today. Yes, the bonus content. Yes, I'm getting all your text messages. I guess I bet if I were to go over to the text messages, yes, they're already there. You're muted. Here they are. They're going to start rolling in. Sorry, guys. For some reason, it just decides to turn off the microphone each day. I know you don't want to hear about it, but let's just go ahead and move on. What's up, everybody? Viewer 12, nice to see you. Steffi, KV Andy, that's Mr. Vanderfeltz, David Lee. Vanderfeltz, such an aristocratic name for someone who lives in Jefferson City. You know what I'm saying? Vanderfeltz. Oh, yes, we're going to Fifth Avenue, go shopping at Saks with Mr. Vanderfeltz. Glad to have you here, Caleb. Good morning. Good morning. And we've got a lot to talk about. Glass Joe Biden's debate demands dropped, and boy, are they dumb. We're going to talk this morning about what Joe Biden wants if he's going to be able to debate Donald Trump. Will Robert F. Kennedy Jr. be included? Well, so the the debate we'll talk about this morning, Joe Biden managed to put together a video of him actually sounding lucid,
America
not sounding
is
like
a
this.
nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to excuse me.
Good morning, Nomad Johnny. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're glad to have you here, brother. The next story we're going to talk about is Kansas City Chiefs player by the name of Harrison Butker. Funny name. He gave a commencement address to Benedictine College, a Catholic private liberal arts college in Atchison, Kansas last week, and he is getting harassed. He's facing backlash after his commencement speech where he criticized Joe Biden, suggested women focus on being mothers and wives instead of pursuing careers, and took a swipe at Pride Month. I, for one, am shocked that a traditional Catholic would give a speech like that at a traditional Catholic college this morning. So yes, that and the newest part of that story is that the official X account, I hate saying X, I like to say Twitter better. The official X account for the city of Kansas City actually revealed where Harrison Butker lives. Not his actual address, but the city where he lives. The official account of Kansas City, not just the person who works for it or their own personal account, the official account of Kansas City, which is overseen by the mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas, actually posted that he lived in a certain city, which some people are saying is doxing. We're going to get into that. Then they said apologies for the error. They didn't mean to tweet it. Yes, I said that deliberately. Apologies for the error. It's just it's a poop show. We are going to talk about that after we talk about the debate. So that should be an interesting one. We're going to talk a little bit about what Mr. Butker said to his traditional Catholics. Man, can you imagine? I mean, it's bad enough to have a last name of Peterson, Peterless, right? To have to grow up like that, but imagine your last name being Butker. I guess he got the ultimate revenge, though, getting turned into like a Kansas City Chiefs player. Sometimes those last names or those weird kid names causes them to excel. Like they go over and above and beyond to try and like show like, oh, they called me Butt Kiss when I was a kid, so I'm going to go be a Kansas City Chiefs player. But look what being Peterson turned me into, you know? Cecilia says Casey Mayer is a dude. That was definitely meant to tweet that. I agree. We're going to look at that and, we'll decide whether or not the apologies was actually legit. The other news. Oh, we'll have Camelia Peterson on the show today at 8 o'clock. It is Thursday after all. We're going to hear from Camelia about this is a terrible story. A 10-year-old boy committed suicide. He was bullied to suicide because of his glasses and his teeth at 10 years old. We're going to talk a little bit about bullying. I know that it's kind of seen, it's been a meme lately online. They're saying that we need to bring back bullying because the kids are too soft these days. Well, there's a price to pay for bullying, and I've always hated bullies, to be honest, and tried to stand up to them whatever I could in my life. And another reason why I hate big government. But we're going to talk about this with Camelia at 8 o'clock, and she'll give me some more parental advice in real time this morning at 8 o'clock. Can't wait to hear it. Camelia will join us at 8 o'clock. It's a terrible story. And at 8:30 a.m. this morning, Trump says Jewish Democrats are nuts. Absolutely correct, Mr. President. And we look forward to you taking back over control. We're also going to talk about a new celebrity blacklist. This time, instead of them being communists.
It sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
Okay, this time it's if they're not communists. Well, I guess if they're not supporting Hamas. Keanu Reeves, Taylor Jenkins, Lady Gaga, many others are being put on a blacklist because they have not come out against Israel or Zionism. Last week, a Google Doc detailing the supposed Israeli affiliations and adjacencies made the rounds on social media. Many of these include authors who either are pro-Israel or who have just not said anything about the conflict. So we'll talk about that this morning with Ian Howarth. I'm gonna be honest, like I've gotten so sick of the homos for Hamas online, including a lot of like right-leaning people, that I've actually been considering becoming a Zionist just to troll, because it would be funny. I would say I would become Jewish, but it's just too much work, and I just don't want to read the Torah and the Talmud and have to memorize a bunch of scriptures and then have to like go to the rabbi 3 times and do all that kind of stuff. That would be a hell of a troll. But being a Zionist, you can just like say you're a Zionist and then just be like, yeah, look, I'm a Zionist, like, I'm gonna bomb your city, like Nazi. I don't know. I just think it'd be funny. I get called it anyway. So might as well become one. I just think it would be a fun troll. I don't know. What do you think? We'll hear from you. If we hear from Ian Howarth this morning, Jewish conservative, should be interesting. If you'd like to share your thoughts on anything happening today, if there's any breaking news, feel free to send us a text 573-319-1586. That's 573-319-1586. The text lines are open. I'll look forward to hearing from you. One listener texted in, if I have a penny every time you're muted, I'll have $2. Hey, that's not how the money goes. The money goes this way, right? So don't forget that we'd love to share with you today our libertarian celebrity for this week's theme of Hollywood and libertarian celebrities. So make sure you get those Rumble rants in, or today's a good day to go and buy that shirt that you've been eyeballing. I know that many of you are big fans of Norm Macdonald, and I took his famous quote and I put it on a t-shirt.
It sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
There you go. That quote on a t-shirt, but with some of the the F word is kind of smudged out a little bit there. So you can wear it, but you can like wear it to a barbecue or a picnic where your family is at. And it will mostly just really offend the liberals. So not your, Christian grandma who would be like, right. She probably won't be able to squint. She won't be able to read it anyway. So today's the day to get your Norm Macdonald commie gobbledygook shirt at apforlibertyshop.com, and then you'll unlock today's bonus content as well. It's a win-win-win-win-win. True survivor. All right. Well, we're going to hear from We're going to hear from Camelia Peterson today. We're going to hear from Ian Howarth today. Let's hear from President Joe Biden. Let's see. He's calling for a debate between himself and Donald Trump. Ask yourself, can you count the number of cuts that were made for them to be able to put this video together? Count the number of cuts.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays. Donald Trump lost.
Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar with video editing, this is a live show. If something happens while, the mic's muted, I screw up, like my nipple pokes out or something like that, it's, that's just live. You can't change that. Most of the videos that you'll watch on YouTube are not live, right? They're pre-produced. So somebody goes together, shoots a bunch of clips, takes the best of the clips, strings them all together, adds a bunch of effects, a bunch of sounds, and then they bring it to you. If somebody makes a mistake in a video that's not live, and most of you probably understand this concept, but I explain it for people who might not know. If you make a mistake when it's not live, you can just patch it up, right? Shoot it again, put it back together, no problem, right? So most people who are lucid can do a video for at least 14 to 20 seconds without needing to make a cut or feeling that they need to do it over and over again. They might need to, but usually they will be able to get at least one full take, 15 to 20 seconds. I mean, if you're watching the Wake Up America show, I'm an expert, so I can do a live show and talk for minutes at a time without there being some typical accident or misspeaking or what have you. Of course, I do misspeak, I do make accidents, and I make flubs, but that's kind of what makes the Wake Up America show a little bit more exciting, a little bit more on the edge. You know that when you're watching the show, what's happening is happening live. My guests could say something wild or stupid or crazy while we're live. There's nothing I can do about it. I don't have a dump button. I don't have a producer, as you realize, right? We're hoping to get one soon. But when Joe Biden does a video like this, and you can see, like, again, let's watch it one more time. We're talking about a 14-second video. He looks perfectly lucid, speaking quite clearly. And obviously a debate is going to be live, so he's not going to be able to do these cuts. But I counted at least 7 or 8 cuts. Let's watch it one more time. See how many cuts we can
Donald
count
Trump
together.
lost
Again.
2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day,
3,
pal. I'll even do it twice.
4.
So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
5.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020.
Okay, so at least 5 cuts there. Probably because he wasn't able to string all of these sentences together. 14 seconds of speaking at the same time.
America
it's a lot of
is a
this.
nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
So, what were the demands for the debate? I've got that article actually somewhere. Here we go. Here are all the restrictions that the Biden's team demanded in their Trump debate offer. President Biden and former President Donald Trump made their plans to officially debate, but the offer from the Biden team came with several strings attached. Trump gave Biden an open invitation to debate anytime, anywhere, and Biden rose to the challenge, telling Trump, "Make my day" on social media. And alongside Biden's announcement came a letter from his campaign to the Commission on Presidential Debates. That's the institution that oversees the presidential debates and, of course, ensures that no third parties or independent candidates could potentially get into those debates. That's the last thing that they wanted, those kinds of things. So here are each of the restrictions that the Biden campaign is demanding in order for them to agree to appear in a debate. No audience, which is fascinating. Biden's campaign criticized the CPD for making debates, quote, huge spectacles with large audiences. It's not like the days of the Lincoln Douglas debates when they used to go around the country and speak to large crowds. Of course, that was one of the only forms of entertainment at the time. And people just are not going to be able to appear in the crowd or boo or hiss or laugh because, as we all know, Donald Trump is quite hilarious, and that's why they don't want it in a live audience, because they know Donald Trump is the best when it comes to an audience, because he makes people laugh, he makes people cry, he makes people cheer, and that's the world that we live in. So the Biden team campaign wrote that the debate should be conducted for the benefit of the American voters watching on television and at home, not as entertainment for an in-person audience. This can't make this up. With raucous or disruptive partisans and donors who consume valuable debate time with noisy spectacles of approval or jeering, as was the case with the original televised debates in 1960. A television studio with just the candidates and moderators is a better, more cost-efficient way to proceed. Focus solely on the interests of the voters. Well, cost-efficient. Why do you care about what the cost? The Biden campaign saying that they're worried about the debate being cost-efficient is just, to me, just chef's kiss. Thank you to Robbie Thurman. He headed over to apforlibertyshop.com and bought himself a delicious box of Founding Flavors coffee. It truly is superior coffee, is it not? Thank you, Robbie. Which means that we've raised, $56 towards the $60 goal. You guys. Classic Wake Up America show. So all we've got to do is raise another $5 or so, and you guys will unlock today's bonus content. You guys really you're really busting my balls, guys. You're really busting my balls. The next item on the term sheet for Joe Biden to agree to a debate: no Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or any other third-party candidate. Sorry, libertarians. Biden's campaign says the debate must be 1 versus 1 with no third-party candidates allowed. I know. The eventual libertarian presidential nominees.
God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Jody Rankin over the chat says, "Watch, they'll try to tie Trump to a chair." Yes. Blue Trike, what's up, brother? He says, haha, wow, showing their hand, but it is brilliant. Make requests that are absolutely so absurd beyond the pale that Trump will turn them down and then blame Trump for being afraid to debate. Exactly. I love you guys. Has nothing to rant about at this moment, but she did unlock the bonus content, which she blessed us.
Can you bless me with something?
Oh, gosh.
Money-wise. Please.
Can you suck it?
What?
Thanks, Urs Mommy. That means we've got the bonus content ready to roll. You did it. You did it. You unlocked the bonus content. You guys make it look easy. The debate should be one-on-one, allowing voters to compare the only two candidates with any statistical chance of prevailing in the Electoral College and not squandering debate time on candidates with no prospect of becoming president, Biden's team wrote. So, this would exclude Robert F. Kennedy Jr., RFK has made his presence known in polls. The funny thing is that they've asked for for the candidates to be excluded unless they hit 15% in 4 high-quality national polls. And what's hilarious too is that they don't include the Libertarian Party in many of these polls. So the Libertarian Party, they don't pick their candidate for another week or two, another couple weeks. And so it becomes this self-defeating dynamic. The Libertarian Party probably needs to choose their nominee a little bit earlier in the year just so they can get a head start and try to get that name out there in polls. That might help. But here's the thing. They just raised the bar anyway, because RFK Jr. is polling at around 10% in many national polls. So what do? They just make the criteria 15%. If Robert F. Kennedy Jr. hit 15% in any poll, then the criteria would be 20%. You guys know how this works. Right. Willis FX88. Is this your first time here on the show? Nice to meet you. Welcome. Thanks for your comment. Says the Biden debate announcement was merely to calm Biden's base about his mental fitness. I don't think there will be any debate. That would be interesting. I'm just curious to see how he's going to pull that off. If he can't do a 13-second video without having to do 5 cuts, doing a live debate, I have no idea how they're going to pull that off. But let's continue here to talk about the demands that the Biden administration made. Biden's demands limit the number of major news outlets that can host a 2024 presidential debate. This is the one that really chaps my ass the most. It should be hosted by any broadcast organization that hosted a Republican primary debate in 2016, in which Donald Trump participated, and a Democratic primary debate in 2020, in which President Biden participated. So neither campaign can assert that the sponsoring organization is obviously unacceptable. If both candidates have previously debated on their airwaves, then neither could object to such a venue. So here are the networks that would actually be acceptable to debate on, according to the Biden administration. This rule sets the limits to CNN, ABC, CBS, or Telemundo. Yeah, they're not kidding, right? So only CNN, ABC, CBS, or Telemundo are acceptable for them to debate. And I got to hand it to the Biden administration's team there, because the way that they framed that was brilliant. That only an institution where Trump has already debated in 2016 during a Republican primary, or in which Biden debated in a primary, et cetera. So it's kind of like, oh, well, you already debated on those networks, so they must be okay. But this is how the Democrats screw the Republicans, and the Republicans just take it, because the fascinating thing is that the Democrats are brilliant at getting Republicans to fight them on their turf. It's kind of like the Viet Cong strategy from Vietnam, right? They lure them into a trap so that they're on favorable ground, and then they set up an ambush. And that's how they manage to win so many battles. The Democrats are experts at getting Republicans to cave to their demands on things like this, and they will never step into a venue where they are not going to have favorable terms. And I got to hand it to the Democrats. They're smart for doing it. It's just that the Republicans are stupid for falling for it every single time. But let's be honest, there really aren't many right of center media institutions where there might be a debate between these two candidates that would be acceptable to people like yourself or myself. And it just goes to show how much leftists have capture of all of the mainstream media in this country. I mean, thank God for rumble.com, and thank God for the alternative media, for which we wouldn't be able to even have these kinds of conversations that we're having right now. Thank you, Rumble. If you're enjoying the Wake Up America show, do us a favor, click that like button. And if it's your first time watching the show, make sure that you subscribe. Click the follow button on the Wake Up America show. And we'd be glad to have you join us regularly. The show's schedule is Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. We'd be glad to have you join us for the regular schedule. Looks like I've got a very interesting text message this morning, quite explicit. I'll have to read that a little bit later. Let's see if we've gotten through the debate terms first. Oh, this one was interesting too. So we're talking about what the Biden team demands in order to debate Donald Trump. Candidate mics must mute after time expires. Okay, what? So the Biden campaign blasted the Commission for Presidential Debates for allowing extensive crosstalk and interruptions during the 2020 debates between Trump and Biden. I mean, Trump is like the big interrupter. They now demand that both candidates' microphones be muted once their allotted speaking time expires. I'm surprised that they didn't call for him to just gag Donald Trump. There should be firm time limits for answers and alternate turns to speak so that the time is evenly divided and we have an exchange of views, not a spectacle of mutual interruption. A candidate's microphone should only be active when it is his turn to speak to promote adherence to the rules and orderly proceedings. The letter to the CPD criticized the organization for being unable or unwilling to enforce the rules in the 2020 debates. Okay, let me just tell you something. when a candidate is interrupting another candidate or overpowering them in such a ways, they're showing something of who they are to the American people. Speaking from experience, as someone who has participated in presidential debates, I think this concept of muting someone's microphone is problematic because there are people who will see Donald Trump or Joe Biden or any other candidate. They will see you interrupting another candidate and they will actually be turned off by that behavior. You can lose votes in doing that. Now, many of you who are watching this show probably wouldn't identify with that. It wouldn't be the type of thing that would turn you off, probably because there's so much goddamn testosterone on the Wake Up America show. Even the women who watch the Wake Up America show could kick, male Democrats' asses. But why would somebody be turned off by seeing someone interrupt them, right? It's because think about that suburban liberal, that female voter, that liberal white female, affluent white liberal female voter. She's going to see Donald Trump interrupting Joe Biden. And she's going to be like, no, that just confirms everything I already believed. He's a mean man. He's a bully. I don't like Donald Trump when he's mean to the old man, Joe Biden. And that might actually harm Donald Trump. So I think it's probably a mistake for Joe Biden to do this. I mean, nobody likes being talked over, but you're the president of the United States, dude. Like, you're the commander in chief. You're the executive where the buck stops here. You're worried about being talked over? You got to dominate him, dude. You've got to show us that you're the man and that you can actually, if you can't stand up to Donald Trump trying to bully you, no wonder Vladimir Putin felt strong enough to invade Ukraine. No wonder Hamas felt like they could act with impunity and invade Israel. No wonder our allies around the world see us as far weaker than when we had Donald Trump. You're showing your weakness here. The Biden team is showing their weakness, demanding that mics be cut after someone's time is allotted. I'll tell you this, some of my finest moments in my presidential debates were when I cut off Gary Johnson and dressed him down and made him look like the little bitch that he was. But it didn't necessarily win me votes just because I won the argument. Obviously, you can see I didn't win the election because, frankly, one of the things that people said that you can read online still, like in the Reddit troll libertarian forums, is people are like, Austin's such an egotistical. I mean, libertarians are little pussy Democrats these days anyways, and they have been for quite some time. But it was like, oh, Austin's such a bully. Oh my God, he's such a mean man. He's so bullying and overpowering. There are people who respond to that, right? A lot of Republicans who watched my debates were like, damn, AP, go, yeah, we like the man, raw. Right, but the fact is that there are a lot of people in this country, and their vote counts just as much as the people who like strong, toxic masculinity. Their vote counts just as much as yours. And when they watch things like this, somebody cutting off someone else's debate, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so mean! Oh my God, give me another Cosmo Martini! I can't believe it! It's like, oh, he's such an asshole! He's such a jerk! Let me go get on my BMW or my Mercedes Benz and go pick up my kid from soccer practice." You know what I'm saying? Grow some thick skin. Thank you, Mighty Megatron. Nice to see you here, brother. Or as Mommy says, as someone who has talked to Putin, he does speak softly. Well, speak softly and carry the big stick. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Appreciate you, Earth Mommy. Man, wouldn't I love to hear that story about you meeting Putin? Trump has accepted Biden's debate offer despite the restrictions. However, with the first encounter scheduled for June 27th to be hosted by CNN. Trump does know how to handle CNN, though, at least. Like, for example, this one town hall.
Back to what happened on that day.
He
you said
did
you
not
weren't,
say that.
He has testified that, Mr. President.
He did not say that.
But you said you weren't very involved that day. You did tell your supporters to come to Washington. You tweeted about it, about
Sure,
that speech that happened on the rally.
Am I allowed to say that?
When they went to the Capitol and they were breaking into the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home?
I don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out.
Answer.
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple. You're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
You know what this reminds me of? Did you guys ever see that movie Orgasmo? Now you're a man, man. If you haven't seen that movie, it's definitely adult content. But it was written by Matt Parker and Trey Stone before South Park fame. It's one of my favorite comedies from the 1990s. Yeah, you know, the guys who wrote South Park, Trey Parker, Matt Stone. Now you're a man, man. Trey Parker, Matt Stone. There you go. What makes a man? There we are. So that's it. Trump says, I'm willing and ready to debate Crooked Joe at the 2 proposed times in June and September. Trump posted, I would strongly recommend more than 2 debates and for excitement purposes, a very large venue. Although Biden is supposedly afraid of crowds. That's only because he doesn't get them. Just tell me when and I'll be there. Let's get ready to rumble. And the Trump campaign released this advertisement for the campaign for their debate last night.
Hey,
Somebody's voting for Joe Biden out there, right? Good stuff. Good stuff. Well done there, Donald Trump. Yes, that was the town hall thing. Oh, so MSNBC did a funny little thing where they interviewed Donald Trump supporters, asking them how they felt about Trump now that these trials have commenced.
By this trial, are they paying close attention, and what impact might a guilty verdict have on their decision to support the former president? Here's what they told me. Take a look. Do each of you support Donald Trump?
I do.
Yes. Yes for all 3 of you? Yes. Has this trial changed your opinion, even caused you to waver or question that at all?
No, it's actually caused me to support him more. I just don't believe there's a coincidence that we have a trial happening in Atlanta. We have one happening in New York. So the question people are beginning to ask themselves, like I did, is like, why now?
It's pretty much everybody says they're picking on him. You know, people are tired of going after him, and you see it in so many areas. It's really not a big issue in the party. Actually, they're really making everybody mad, and they look at a big bully, and the government is the bully.
This is going to be your first time casting a ballot. What is it for you?
But he still hasn't given up. He keeps fighting to do what's right.
I've talked to many people who
you're a man.
Who formerly identified as a Democrat. They have changed their political persuasion to independent, and they are looking forward to voting for Trump. Wow. Because now they find something in common with a political candidate at that level.
When you say they find commonality, what is that commonality?
They have felt persecuted by the system of American injustice. And it's not a stretch for them to think that Trump may be a victim as well. People see that there's some kind of commonality between himself and maybe all the black men that have been incarcerated and the families that have been impacted.
Damn, dude. It's not just the Latinos for Donald Trump. It's the black men, too. They see the way that the criminal justice system is being used against Donald Trump, and they identify with it. And that is why so many black men are saying this year that they will be supporting Donald Trump. You love to see it.
Do not come. Do not come.
I'm going to come.
Oh. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Glad and thankful to have you here. Click that like button. And of course, if it's your first time here, we'd love to have you follow the channel so that you can join us regularly every Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. Are we enjoying the show so far? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, well, then why haven't you clicked that like button yet? Do us a favor and click that like. One listener texted in this morning, says, Trump should hire the comedian Jeff Dunham and debate his Walter the Puppet dressed as Biden just for laughs. That is funny. You can text the show as well at 573-319-1586. Again, the text lines are open, and you can text me anytime that you want. Program this number into your phone and hit me up anytime. Say, hey, what up, AP? Let's chat about this or like that. Or, for example, if you bought something at apforlibertyshop.com and you're wondering what your tracking number is, or your order didn't arrive, or whatever, you can also text that line for any questions that you might have about the merchandise shop at apforlibertyshop.com. We call it the Grift Shop. So 573-319-1586 is the text line. Make sure that you get it in. We've got about 20 minutes until Camelia Peterson joins us to talk about the tragic tale of a 10-year-old boy who self-deleted after he was bullied in his school for wearing glasses and for his teeth. We're going to talk about that with Camelia this morning. She's going to give me some more parental advice as I hurdle every day towards parenthood. Boy, last night, little baby Hazel was kicking up a storm. It was so cute. So like last night around 10 o'clock, Stephanie and I finally get to bed after I put the bonus content together, which is coming because you guys unlocked it. Coming soon. But, and I felt the little baby Hazel kick a little bit before, but last night it was like I could feel almost like the outline of her hands and her feet as she was just like boom, 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 just like bam, bam, bam. And I just kind of like, it reminded me a little bit of that scene from Aliens, the second one, you know, with where Sigourney Weaver comes up on that woman who's like, kill me, kill me. And then it's like the monster's like under her chest and it's like, and she like, and then like one of the Marines comes in, like torches it and stuff like that. Obviously, I wouldn't do that to my poor sweet Stephanie. No, I would not.
How dare you?
I would not. But it did kind of remind me a little bit of that last night. So, anyways, why are we talking about that, Austin? I don't know. Let's talk about something else, like this news. Harrison Butker, Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, is facing a backlash over his commencement speech to the class of 2024 at the Benedictine College. That's a Catholic school in Kansas, where he criticized Joe Biden. Oh, no, God, no. God. Suggested women focus on being mothers and wives instead of pursuing careers. And took a swipe at Pride Month. I, for one, am shocked. Now, Butker, in his speech, I'll give you the breakdown of it. He bemoaned an erosion of traditional Catholic values in daily life, claiming that things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values and media come from, quote, the pervasiveness of disorder. I could cherry pick some of those things in there, good or bad, but the guy's a Catholic. What do you expect? He's a Kansas City Chiefs player, by the way. This is why there's this outrage and why the official KansasCity.com X account last night attempted to tell people where he lived. We're going to get to that in just a minute. But continuing on with what Harrison Butker said in his speech, he criticized Biden for proclaiming his Catholic faith while being, quote, delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. Yeah, that's pretty cringe, and I'm not even a Christian. He says he accused the president of making it appear that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice. Oh, well, I mean, dude is what he is. I mean, not my circus, not my monkeys, but I know a lot of pro-choice Catholics. Butker told the women in the class that they had been told diabolical lies about pursuing careers. Ladies, Well, what say you? Accused, and that his and his family's success is a result of his wife's focus on being a wife and a mother, claiming that, quote, her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. Butker, like ass dog, says Drummer Boy. Oh, you. Butker accused world leaders of pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America. True. And praised the students at Benedictine for embracing their religion with pride, but, quote, not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it. Dude. Spicy Butker. He's got a very spicy butt curve. He also criticized the Catholic Church and bishops and priests by misleading their flocks by prioritizing familiarity with their parishioners instead of being teachers. Quoting Taylor Swift, girlfriend of his teammate, Travis Kelce, by saying, familiarity breeds contempt. Boy, I got a lot to say about that one, but I'll hold off for just a moment. The speech was largely criticized on social media, and it prompted a change.org petition calling for him to be released for the Chiefs. That's the left's solution for everything. I don't like your opinion. Fire that man. And you can read his entire commencement speech in full if you're interested. I just dropped it over in the chat over at rumble.com. You are welcome. I thought that the op-ed that was written by someone opposing him in the Kansas City Star was actually quite interesting. Yvette Walker, she published this piece yesterday in the KC Star, and the title is Chiefs Butker is welcome to his conservative beliefs, but he's wrong on women and the Bible. So this is another Catholic who is responding to him, and I thought that her op-ed was interesting. She's talking about him being a Catholic and giving a very orthodox commencement address at the private Catholic liberal arts college in Atchison, Kansas. Now, Yvette, who wrote this piece, is a Christian and raised as a Catholic, says she wasn't surprised by anything she said, but she has mixed feelings about it. He apparently is pre-Vatican II Catholic, which means very, very orthodox and traditional, and he goes to services where the Mass is entirely in Latin. So the Benedictine college who invited him knew what they were getting. The audience, of course, cheered several times during the speech, which should not be surprising because these are the kind of people who would support these kinds of ideas. But Yvette, in the KC Star, writes that the one thing that went against Catholic tradition was an inference that the Jewish people killed Jesus Christ when Butker blasted a bill that condemned anti-Semitism. The church long has held that Jews could not be held collectively accountable since the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s. So this pre-Vatican II, I guess it used to be, it used to be part of the Catholic tradition to believe that the Jews killed Jesus Christ. In 2011, Pope Benedict XIV affirmed this in his personal reflection, Jesus of Nazareth, from entrance into Jerusalem to the resurrection, and wrote, there is no basis in Scripture for blaming Jews. Yvette continues in the KC Star that she wants to address his it's not his sound bites disparaging LGBT pride, COVID-19 policies, abortion rights, or in vitro fertilization, but his discussion on the role of gender are worth exploring. So these are Butker's comments in total that Yvette will respond to. Here's what Butker said. This is a portion of his speech. Butker said, for the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now about to cross the stage and thinking about all the promotions and titles you're going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. Now, Yvette says motherhood and homemaking are incredibly important and rewarding and filled with hard work. So is choosing a full-time career. Many women do both, but Butker suggesting that staying home is more biblical than working outside the home. But Yvette, in the KC Star, these are not my words, says that he forgot the women leaders in the Bible who didn't stay home and were part of the early Christian movement, such as Mary Magdalene, who traveled with Jesus and was the first to witness the resurrection. She and other women delivered the gospel to Jews and non-Jews after Jesus left this world. These women, like early Christian leaders, Peter, Paul, and John, and Timothy, were crucial in helping to spread the news of Jesus Christ. And let's not overlook Deborah, the Old Testament military leader in the book of Judges, who strategized battle against the Canaanites. She has also been called a prophet. She certainly didn't choose homemaking. The Bible highlights several other women, such as Ruth, Naomi, and Esther. And while these women are remembered for their commitment to family, it shows their bravery and backbone. Yvette, writing in the KC Star, says, being a homemaker and mother is wonderful, but some women don't marry or can't have children, and pushing a woman's worth through reproduction is cruel. She says that she did appreciate some of what she heard from Butker's speech. She says the address was appropriate for the crowd, but she says she hopes women in the audience who didn't agree with everything Butker said remember they can think for themselves, read the Bible for themselves, and choose the reasoning God granted to live a full and worthwhile life, whether you have a family or not. Interesting. You know, as a secular person reading these things, a former Christian, I have to say, I think it is, an absolutely just astounding situation that we find ourselves in the modern age, where for such a long time we saw there was I would say there's been a lot of pushback, I guess I would say, from the religious right in recent decades against the more secular, agnostic left, which is something I could go into for hours, but I just don't have time because we got Camellia coming here in less than 10 minutes. One of my buddies online, Eric John, the pizza artist, who we've had some interesting conversations on X, he just sent me a question asking, Austin, what do you think about Walter Block being, quote, excommunicated from libertarianism and removed as a senior fellow from the Mises Institute over his views on the Israel-Hamas war? Well, that's a really good question, and one that I would have a longer answer for. I've been trying to get Walter Block on my show, but it looks like it's probably not going to happen because we aren't able to find a time to be able to record together, and he can't come on live. I will say this, that I'm not surprised by this. Man, this is such a long story, and it deals with my origin story to the libertarian movement. I will say that I think that the libertarian movement has become poisonous on the question of foreign policy, that libertarians have placed foreign policy so much to the forefront as such a critical issue that it has, I think, poisoned. The American libertarian movement has become a toxic pool of sludge. And a large part of that is because of the hyper focus on foreign policy, which is ironic because we're such non-interventionists. But what's fascinating to me is that the hatred of Israel from so many libertarians in the United States, not around the world, because most libertarians around the rest of the world tend to see Israel the way that I see it and that Javier Milei sees it. But the fascinating thing about the disdain from American libertarians for Israel is it's interesting because it's not they don't share that same level of disdain or hatred for ideological factions in Africa, for example. Like, they don't place a litmus test for how you feel about how China treats their Uyghur population, for example. Right? They don't, and I'm not saying that that's analogous, but they use, for some reason, American libertarians use Israel as a litmus test for libertarianism that they don't apply to any other conflict that might be analogous. And I used to know a couple of conflicts that were much closer. And there are a couple, like in Africa, for example, of warring tribes. But if you pick the side of one warring tribe, you're not going to get kicked out of libertarianism or removed from the Mises Institute because you chose one side or another in this conflict as the morally superior side. But American libertarians specifically do choose a side when it comes to the Israel versus Gaza conflict. And I think that in large part it has a lot to do with communism's influence on the American libertarian movement. I used to be very naive and think that antiwar.com was populated by libertarians who should have a non-interventionist foreign policy. But what I realized was that American communists really have had a large impact on American libertarian foreign policy. And that what I used to believe about what American libertarians believed about foreign policy was actually wrong. And I was quite naive because having spent the last 15 years devoted to public activism and devoted to the ideas of limited government, and being someone who is pro-American and who is pro-liberalism to the extent of like limited government and personal liberty and individual rights and individual values, that I thought that this is what people were shared. But what I realized is that the libertarian movement is just as prone to the same bigotries and prejudices as any other political movement. And one of those specifically is a thick streak of anti-Semitism that runs through the American libertarian movement. That's not shared by libertarians in many places around the world. I'm not accusing the Mises Institutes of being an anti-Semitic institution. I'm saying that the many individuals who are in the libertarian movement make up the libertarian movement are. And so they use Israel and Palestine as a litmus test that they would never apply to anything else, which shows that they have a special interest, right? When politicians talk about the special interests, we're always like, oh, the special interests. Well, what are the special interests? Well, the special interests are people who have a very keen, narrow interest in one specific topic or conflict or nation or what have you. Right. Well, many libertarians have a very special interest in Israel, and there is an underlying anti-Semitism that comes with the hatred for Israel, of course. And it's not all of it. The funny thing is that you will frequently hear some of these people online say, well, I'm not an anti-Jew, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm anti-Zionist. Bullshit. All right. I know when someone is pissing on my leg and telling me it's raining. The amount of people that I've come across, and I've been to thousands of political rallies, and I've met tens of thousands, and I've shook hands and stared in the face and had conversations with hundreds of thousands of people in the last 15 years. I've run for president of the United States. I've been backstage. I've had conversations with kings and with peasants. And in all those conversations and all the time, I can only give you my anecdotal experiences to tell you that the number of people that you could tell where it was a very specific policy-centric focus on the behavior of Israel that was related to their anarcho-capitalist beliefs, and therefore I'm criticizing their state because I see them as an expression of an imperialist state that is opposed to my libertarian values. The amount of people who did that, it was very, 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 very tiny. But when you scratched the anti-Zionist, eventually you would find the little comb must say, it started coming out, right? I'm not stupid. I know my history. I pay attention. I know when people are saying one thing and they're inferring something else, right? I got straight A's in history and in English, literature, a pretty much perfect score on my ACT and reading comprehension, communication. This is what I do for a living. So the thing about Walter Block, of course, is that he's probably not completely objective either, because, of course, he's Jewish and he's going to take a special exception for his people. Well, is he not allowed to do that? I mean, is there something wrong with that? I mean, there are 16 million Jews in the world, and they have historically been persecuted, which isn't to say that they should compete in the victimhood Olympics like anybody else, and there shouldn't be diversity, equity, and inclusion for them like anybody else. I am looking forward, though, to talking to Ian Howarth, who is a conservative Jew. He'll be joining me at 8:30 this morning. We're going to talk to him more about that. Eric John, the pizza artist, I hope that I explained the best of my ability, answered your question, although I could have a conversation about this for hours, and I just don't want to monopolize that time. I want to keep to the big news so that the people who are not interested in our internecine squabbles will still be interested. So you unlocked the bonus content today, which means that, yes, you get to see who today's libertarian celebrity is. So I'll play that bonus content for you. I'm going to go get Camellia to talk about the news story of a 10-year-old boy committed suicide for being bullied. We're going to talk about that when we get back on the Wake Up America show at wakeupamericashow.com. Wake Up America. Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Appreciate you sticking around and hanging out through the bonus content, which you all unlocked today. Today's libertarian celebrity was Glenn Jacobs, a.k.a. Kane, the professional wrestler, and now mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee. I've got a cool little Glenn Jacobs story I can tell you real quick. So when he was running for mayor for the first term, he and I were both campaigning at the same time. So I had just joined the Republican Party. This was 2017. And he had joined the Republican Party. And everybody knew that he was this libertarian. So he was getting attacked for being not a real conservative, not a real Republican. You know how it is, blah, blah, blah. And he actually called me and said, Austin, do you have any advice on how to respond to attacks that, you know, I'm a libertarian and not a real Republican? And I said, yes, actually, the best way to respond to that is to quote Ronald Reagan when he said in an interview back in the 1970s that libertarianism is the heart and soul of conservatism. And he's like, oh, thanks. He went on to win his race. And y'all know what happened to me. Boo. Ended up becoming a radio host and the host of the Wake Up America show, where every Tuesday and Thursday, my good friend Camelia Peterson joins us live. When is she going to run for office? What's up, CJ?
Asked that, and never say never, but not any time in the foreseeable future.
Why don't you run against that?
I don't think I could.
Why don't you run against that Jill Carter down there? She's gotten quite trace annoying with the whole school choice stuff.
Well, that's not a leap that I would want to make straight into the Senate. There are definitely better things I would like to do with my life right now than run for office. I do have a great deal of respect for anybody that puts themselves out there to do that, though. I think that most people don't understand everything that comes with that.
I'm really glad that the Missouri legislative session is over because it's always such a train wreck. But the thing that I'm not looking forward to now is that it's primary season, and so a lot of these people who are running are our friends, and they're competing against each other, and we're getting phone calls for our support, and they're asking us for money, and they're saying terrible, awful things about each other, and it's just kind of like, will you all please shut up? Like, I wish that the price.
He wears glasses, and so he was being bullied, for his appearance. And then I guess he got beat up on the school bus. And then the day before this happened, there was some kind of an incident in a bathroom. And I guess it had just gotten increasingly worse. The father says that they, talked to the school like 20 times about it and filed reports.
20 times?
They said 20 times. The superintendent of the school, obviously has not, has not talked about it, except for I think that he might have said that they had nothing on record of any complaints. I mean, of course, they're going to say that right now. It's hard to know, what will eventually come out. It's also hard to know, what was, a lot of what was going on with the circumstances, what at home or whatever, because it's so like if the parents knew that the bullying was that bad and they had talked to the school about it 20 times, it's very difficult for me to imagine why you're not taking much more drastic steps to take that kid out of that environment. And it's been interesting. I posted about this on Twitter last night, and the responses have been very mixed. Some people on the left are, shocked and appalled that I would, bring the education choice issue into that and making it easier for parents to take their kids out of schools that are not good for them. And then other people are like, well, we just need to be more Spartan-like with our parenting and, toughen kids up and make them stand up to this stuff and be able to take these kind of, this kind of negativity in their life. And then there are other parents who are kind of like me, who are like, how do you leave your kid in that environment? So it's just, there's so much that we don't know. And it's really hard to imagine being in those parents' shoes and not doing something more. But
there's no self-defense style that can teach you to protect yourself against a gang of bullies who beat you up. If they pounce on you, like several of them, there's nothing you can do about it, right? There's a Michael Malice quote that got shared around several years ago where he said, public schools are the only place that most people will encounter violence in their entire lives. And it's very true unless you live in some of these major cities.
this is I've probably said this 100 times on this show, even like, I think this is one of the biggest problems in our society is that we put kids of the same age in, you know, a classroom and an environment together for so much of their lives. And this is literally mob mentality. And it just, you know, people do things that you would not expect them to do when they're in those situations. And you've got, you know, boys or whoever they were that gang up on a kid, and then it becomes like the popular thing to do to pick on this kid. And it takes, and nobody, you know, and other children, I think a lot of times are afraid to stand up to that because it takes a lot of guts to be able to, you know, go against the flow and to stick up for somebody and to put yourself at risk, you know, by doing that. There is another aspect to this too. This was apparently also going on Snapchat. That's probably one of my biggest questions. And I do, like, as a parent, I do understand the challenges in monitoring social media and phones and things like that for kids. But this bullying was going on Snapchat. I don't know if the parents knew that ahead of time. If they did, if I knew that was happening with my kid on a social media platform, you know, I would for sure, like, that would be getting blocked. That would be coming off of their phones. It's really hard to say, but I think that is just another factor in this that just is, it's terrible all around.
You're just tuning into the Wake Up America show. Good morning. I'm Austin Peterson. I'm speaking to my friend Camelia about a 10-year-old boy who committed suicide after being bullied at his public school. He was physically beaten and he was tormented mercilessly, not just in person, but also online on Snapchat. Let's focus in on that for just a moment here, Camelia, that Snapchat question, because, you know, as everyone knows, I'm about to be a father for the very first time, so I have to navigate these very perilous waters about how to deal with social media with your young person. I mean, you've raised two daughters and during the age of social media where things like this can exist, but it seems as if the intensity of what happens it gets worse. I mean, you see how adults treat each other, and it's awful. I can't imagine what it must be like being a child growing up and having to deal with the kind of merciless bullying that must go on online, because it's one thing to say something to somebody's face, which when you're an adult, very rarely do we say to each other in person what we say to each other online.
Oh,
we
for
all
sure.
we all love
Right.
anonymity. Kids, they don't quite have the same filters. They're going to say things, awful things to one another in person much more frequently than we do as adults. But then think about what it must be like when kids bully each other online and they feel absolutely zero compunctions. They don't even, they're not thinking about their jobs. They're not thinking about getting canceled at work for their opinions. They're going to say the N-word. They're going to do things that, as we as adults realize that, you know, there are consequences for our speech and our behavior. Kids don't feel that same level of accountability. How do we navigate these waters? I mean, what advice would you give to me as a coming parent in terms of how to deal with social media and our children? It seems like 10 years old is a little too young for Snapchat or for apps like that. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, maybe. And I do think that, you know, some of this is, I hate to even compare, like, you know, sometimes when you see adults behaving badly, you're like, you know, stop acting like, you know, a 12-year-old or whatever, you know, but I've stopped like comparing adults to children like that, because, you know, so many children behave better than adults do anymore. And sometimes I think the adults are behaving worse. But I do think that, you know, kids who behave in this way, who engage in bullying, are doing that out of a reaction to something else going on in their lives. They've either seen that behavior modeled and normalized for them, or they're reacting to, you know, maybe being bullied themselves, or, you know, something like that, something that's negative in their own lives. However, I think that even in the social media age, I think increasingly the younger generation is aware of the bullying issue, and that it's a problem, and that they can't, like, ways to cope with that online. But there will always be those kids and people in general who are just much more vulnerable by virtue of their personality and their self-esteem, and, you know, not not really being emotionally equipped. And you can do, I think, everything that you can do as a parent to emotionally equip your kids for handling these sort of situations. And that's no guarantee. I mean, you can give them all the tools they need, but some kids are just going to have a harder time with that. And they're going to need that constant reinforcement and extra care and extra guardrails up. And I think that this was one of those kids, like, I think his parents thought that it mentioned somewhere in there, they were talking about telling him about only listening to people who love you. I think that's a nice thought, but it's really hard for a child to internalize that and just be able to blow everything off. Like, adults can't even blow everything off, right? I mean, our feelings get hurt. And I think when it comes to social media, it is difficult to know exactly at what point to allow your child access to it. I see parents all the time who are like, oh, my kid's not going to have a phone until they're 16. They're not going to have social media until they're whatever, And I'm like, that's a nice thought, and like, good luck with that. But it may be impractical. I think this is where it's so important to know your child and to be very intentional with them in your relationship with them, because that's how you know their maturity level, what they can handle. And I also believe that parents should have full access to any social media platform that their children use. I still do that. I mean, my 14-year-old, I still have access to her social media accounts. Now, does that mean that she couldn't go create one that I don't know about? I mean, of course, like that is a risk in there. And I can't control for that forever. And I will admit too that, I have made my share of mistakes, and there have been times where I have not monitored as closely as I should have. And there have been negative consequences that have come out of that we've had to deal with. So I'm not going to stand here, I'm not going to sit here and judge parents for not, covering every little thing, because it is hard. But I do think that, more than ever, like, I think the job of parents now versus say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it is more difficult, just because you do have to worry about all of these things that are accessible now in your home. And you just have to be a lot more vigilant.
Yeah, and on one hand, you want to protect your kids. On the other hand, you don't want to be a helicopter parent and put them in a situation where they can't deal with the kind of bullying they're going to deal with as adults. I mean, it is such a tightrope that parents in 2024 have to navigate in how to balance these two competing instincts. You want them to be hard, you want them to toughen up. I see our friend Urs Mommy in the chat said, for example, she got horribly bullied in 6th grade when her mother died. It made her a stronger person, but that isn't the case for everyone. It's true. Some people can deal with things and some people can't. It sounds like the intensity of the level of the bullying that was going on in this case of this young boy, and it having been reported to the public school 20 times, public schools are definitely part of the problem. Do we agree on that?
Sure. And I don't think it's all of the problem. I mean, a couple of the people that were commenting, on the Twitter post, pointed this out, and that this doesn't just happen in public schools. And that's true. But I think by virtue of the system itself, and that it is very protectionistic, because it just is inherent in a government, bureaucracy, and the structure, that the way that it's set up, like, they're going to protect themselves, not only because of that, but also because of the liability that comes with it. But I think they are much more likely to, deny it, sweep it under the rug, but they are not. There's not the level of accountability that you have with a private school, because if you have your child in a private school, you are better able, first of all, to remove them. Second of all, it's likely to be, a smaller environment where, if you're going to be more hands-on anyway, but the teachers and the administrators are much more accountable to you as a parent than they are, say, in a public school setting. And the other thing too is, like, this is not the only time that this happens. There was somebody that commented that talked about their own experience, and this has been, probably 15, 20 years ago, I would say, if I'm guessing, where he was, bullied mercilessly, as a child in school. And the thing is he said, you could tell teachers and they wouldn't do anything. Or if you reacted, like if you lashed back or or responded in any way, then you got in trouble for the response itself. And I do think that happens sometimes, because you don't necessarily see what the bullying that happens to instigate that response in a child, but then that child ends up getting in trouble for reacting.
So what is a good age, would you say, to be able to allow a child to enter the wonderful world of the World Wide Web?
That's a hard question. So I'll tell you what I did, and I don't know if it was really the right thing or not. Like I didn't, my older daughter didn't get Facebook until she was 16. The younger one was a little younger, and poor firstborns, they're the guinea pigs. And, of course, the middle children on down are always, things are a little more relaxed with them, I think. But it very much, like, they are also very different children. And so, they're, in hindsight, I would have restricted it with my younger daughter for longer than what I did. I don't know that would be the answer, but I think it's different for every child. I don't know. I think 10 is too young, right? I think that's too young to be on Snapchat for sure. And lots of those social media platforms. So I don't know, beyond that, I know a lot of times, especially when you're talking about divided families where, the parents are divorced and children are going back and forth between households, and, where children are at school, like we are not as trusting of our kids being at school without some form of communication with them, which there's some debate that can be had about that, right? But I do think that, we give phones to children at a much earlier age because we are so much more mobile as a society. And if they're going from one household to another, that's kind of another factor that you have to consider as well. So, I mean, like, it was never necessary for me to give my girls a phone when they were that young, because that wasn't an issue. But, if they were going to a friend's house or something like that, where I was just not there, there is some peace of mind that comes with, them having that phone. And it's hard to find a phone that is not plugged into the internet anymore. I'm like, you see lots of parents talk about flip phones. They're not real easy to find anymore. But I do think that there are lots of things, there are lots of tools out there that give parents the tools they need to monitor and to restrict access on their phone. And in the end, it just comes down to us making that call and being vigilant about it.
Let's do it. Camellia Peterson, anything else you want to share before we let you go today?
No, for the parents out there, I would just encourage you to just be really intentional in how you spend time with your kids. I would say that's probably one of the biggest positive changes I made in my parenting, was to be very intentional about the time that I spent with them. And in the day-to-day busyness, sometimes that gets lost, but all time is quality time.
Follow her over on x.com @RareCamellia. She is very rare. Thank you very much for your time. But she does appear here twice a week, so not as rare, but we appreciate it every time. Thank you, CJ. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for your insight on this. We're very grateful.
Yeah, have a great day, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye, CJ. Give her a round of applause. Hey, before I get to my buddy Ian Howarth to talk about the new Hollywood blacklist, check out apforlibertyshop.com, our Norm Macdonald commie gobbledygook shirt. Gobbledygook? Gobbledygook.
No
That's
offense, but it sounds like some fucking commie gobbledygook.
It's flying off the shelves. You can get yours at apforlibertyshop.com. The Norm Macdonald, no offense, but it sounds like some effing commie gobbledygook. Get yours today. Exclusively sold, designed by me at apforlibertyshop.com. Head on over there. We're going to go to a quick commercial break anyway, so I can get my buddy Ian Howarth on the set. Go to apforlibertyshop.com. Get yourself something real nice. There's lots of stuff, nice stuff there. All right, we'll be back with more talking about that Hollywood blacklist. It's on the Wake Up America show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
expanse of time, a year might seem like a mere moment, but oh, what a year it's been. In September 2022, Austin and Stephanie Peterson embarked on a journey to wake up America. They began humbly, with just 20 souls tuning in, learning, listening, and though challenges arose, like the looming shadow of YouTube demonetization, their spirit never waned. And now, thanks to you, thousands rise with the sun to join them, to listen, to engage, to be a part of a community. So here's to you, and to Wake Up America, for memories shared, for friends made, for the journey ahead, and for never, ever forgetting to rise and freedom. Happy anniversary.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Believe me, Austin Peterson is the best. He's got the greatest Wake Up America show I've ever seen. Whenever I tune in the mornings and watch the live stream, let me tell you, he has got the absolute best content. I love his guests. It's just a total blast to watch, and I highly endorse and recommend the Wake Up America show. It's terrific, believe me.
Is the outdoor of your home about as exciting as a library? Then spice it up and unbore your space with our custom metal signs. Crafted with love and a bit of libertarian magic, you can customize your own metal sign at ap4libertyshop.com. So head to ap4libertyshop.com, customize your own metal sign today.
Welcome to a world of vocal discovery at Peterson Voice Studio. I'm Justin Peterson, here to guide your musical journey. Envision a place where your voice reaches new heights, where every note tells a story. We embrace all singers, from the enthusiastic shower vocalists to aspiring stars, ensuring each voice finds its unique rhythm and tone. Are you ready to elevate your voice? Visit petersonvoicestudio.com and sign up for remote lessons tailored just for you. Let's begin this melodious journey together.
Tired of spending your hard-earned money on woke corporations that don't share your pro-freedom values? Fed up with sipping liberal lattes and progressive cappuccinos? Introducing Founding Flavors from AP for Liberty Shop. Get your day started with Washington's Revolutionary Roast. As robust and principled as the man himself, this blend is the shot of energy heard round the world. Or maybe you want to taste the fervor of freedom with Adams's Patriotic Perk. It's as dynamic and balanced as the U.S. Constitution, sure to awaken your spirit of liberty. For the aficionados, we've got the Jeffersonian Java, a complex mix of flavors that speaks volumes about your refined tastes. And don't forget Betsy's Liberty Lullaby, our decaf option, crafted with the same care and dedication Betsy Ross put into our Star-Spangled Banner. This blend lets you enjoy the taste of freedom anytime without losing sleep. No woke beans here, folks. Just pure, patriotic, pro-freedom flavors brewed with love for liberty. So why compromise your principles for a cup of coffee? Stand up for your values, perk up your patriotism, and start your day the American way. Get your founding flavors at ap4libertyshop.com. Welcome back to the Wake Up America show. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. Thanks for sticking around through the commercial break. We appreciate that very much. And of course, all the support that we get from listeners and viewers like you. Like the time that you hit the like button during the stream. What, you haven't done that yet? Come on. Boo, boo, boo this man or woman. Or whatever you call yourself. We are libertarians these days. Click that like button. And if it's your first time watching the Wake Up America show, of course, the follow button is your friend as well. And we'll be your friend too if you join us live every Monday through Friday 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Be glad to have you join us. Make some friends, share some cookies and some milk. A little bit early for that. Maybe some eggs and bacon. All right. Well, you know, the liberty movement is in a state of utter disarray, and a lot of it has to do with the conflict between Israel and Gaza that's been ongoing since the terrorist attack by Hamas on October 7th. It's roiling politics, left, right, center, libertarian, communist, anarchist, minarchist, or what have you. And Hollywood, of course, is no different. There's been a blacklist circulating of people who might have pro-Israel views, or just people who haven't said anything about Israel at all. Donald Trump, he'll say anything about anything. And he says that if you're a Democrat, or you're a Jewish Democrat, you're out of your mind. People like Alan Dershowitz and others, with the state of the Democratic Party, I have to say, definitely going with Donald Trump on this one. Joining us now to discuss is Ian Howarth. He's a Jewish gentleman himself and a conservative, and he's joining us live. It's been quite a while since we've seen him, so welcome back. Ian, nice to see you, brother.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Love the shirt as always. Great to be back.
Thank you, Ian. Grateful to have you here, brother. Donald Trump was talking about Alan Dershowitz the other day, and he was saying, if you're looking at how the Democrat Party is behaving during these protests on college campuses, calling him Genocide Joe, if you're a Jew and you're still a Democrat, and keep in mind, I have some Jewish Democrat family members, so I have to be a little careful here.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's hard to talk to them about Donald Trump, right? It's like, not listening. But I kind of agree with him. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the sentiment of what he's putting forward. I think the way he did it is stereotypically terrible because, you know, well, guess what? It's Donald Trump. He says things. He's not the he's a smooth talker as an entertainer. I think when it comes to policy, gets a little bit dodgy. I think he blurred the line between loyalty to Israel and America that I think raises a lot of red flags for people, I think quite rightly. The concern for me from the very beginning, I think you can have two concerns. You can have one, a concern for what's going on in Israel, but also what's happening to Americans, not just the Americans who are still being held hostage in Gaza, by the way, that very few people seem to care about, but also the anti-Semitism that is happening domestically as a result of Democratic Party policy. So I think Donald Trump doesn't need to even mention Israel right now. If we're talking about American Jews, just look outside your window. Look what's happening to American Jewish students on college campuses across the country, not just one, not just two, quite literally across the country. That should be enough to motivate people to think that maybe Joe Biden kissing ass of jihadis in Michigan isn't a great idea if you actually care about the country, if you care about Western values, if you care about your Jewish neighbors. I wish that's the tack he took. But of course, deep down, he's utterly correct.
How do you deal with Jewish Democrats in this election? I mean, just let it lie, let them see the situation as it is right now, because I mean, I feel like a little bit of prodding might be necessary, you know, with everything's at stake. Ian, I mean, how should I approach my Democratic Jewish in-laws about this topic? You know, what would you say?
I mean, I think you have to, because I think if you just ignore issues, then the Democrats always circle the wagon. They always find a way to bring people in under a worse sense of victimhood, a greater danger. Like, yeah, Israel is on fire right now. The whole world is on fire. Joe Biden is destroying the economy. But what about the threat to democracy, Austin? Like, we've got to think about these kind of things. There's always a greater threat out there that just happens to erase all of the things Democrats are doing wrong. So I think we absolutely have to talk to Jewish Democrats. I think the main way of doing it is to try and make this not about Trump and make this all about Biden. That's really my advice for Republicans during this entire election, because there are people out there who hate Trump, and that blinds them to really what's going on right now and why Joe Biden is so much worse. Like, you don't have to be a fan of Trump to admit that Joe Biden has been appalling on basically any front that you look at. That's really the tact I take. I also look at things on almost a value level. So I talk about, this is why the Second Amendment needs to exist. This is why things like the First Amendment need to exist. And then you get into the weeds of what is and isn't under the First Amendment in terms of violent rhetoric on campus, in terms of actually calling for violence or just saying things you don't like. Like, this is how we get into conservative values or right-wing values or just not radical left-wing values without having to mention the name Trump. I think that's the key to it, is to not make this about personalities, make this about values.
There's a fear amongst people, and this has been echoed by conservatives like Matt Walsh and others, about the pushback against the obvious anti-Semitism that we're seeing on college campuses and from the left. there's a fear that there's an overreaction in a crackdown on what is free speech. I mean, it's illegal and allowable to not like the state of Israel and its foreign affairs. It's legal and allowable to not like Jews as a culture or an ethnicity, because even hate speech is allowed under the First Amendment. It seems, though, as if the pro-Israel lobby, AIPAC and others, they take a very blunt hammer, Maccabee's hammer, if you will, when it comes to the question of free speech, that I find disconcerting when it comes to the question of what should be allowable speech. Where do you fall on that issue?
Yeah, I definitely encourage everyone listening right now just to check out what I've written and what I've talked about on this issue, because I think this is where all of the nuance is being lost, and where a lot of conservative Jews who care about these issues too often get being pushed to the side, because there are some louder voices out there who I don't think often actually care about anti-Semitism, especially on the political side. There are a lot of people who want to use this issue to basically create a fireworks show for their own action. It's like, look at me, I'm ending anti-Semitism. I mean, even in states that respect the First Amendment, for example, Greg Abbott reacting to these college so-called protests, saying that anti-Semitism will not be accepted. Like, that's not even the legislation that he was pushing. It's just the lazy wording because you want to be seen as the great hero coming to save people. But again, anti-Semitism generally does fall under the First Amendment. My issue is always threats of violence, incitement of violence, direct threats. That's what we should be focusing on, because guess what? That's what's happening on campuses. We're also seeing actual acts of violence. I would much rather see people focusing on those that we also have existing laws for, by the way. Beating someone unconscious in the street, regardless of whether they're Jewish or not, is already illegal. And so that's kind of the issue I come at from that direction. But there's also a lot of, I don't want to say lies, but falsehoods being pushed about, for example, the Title VI changes to do with anti-Semitism. People saying that if you quote scripture, you're going to be thrown in jail. That's just false on multiple levels. That's not me defending the legislation. I think Title VI is terrible and everything to do with it is terrible. But there's just a lack of really intellectual honesty going on, because there's a lot of people on both sides basically pushing fear-mongering tactics just to get attention, just to get clicks, just to get their own group behind them. So there's a lot of people, for example, trying to make this about anti-Christian bigotry, and anti-Christian bigotry or anti-Catholic bigotry is far worse than anti-Jewish bigotry, and no one cares about that, etc. We should care about all religious bigotry, because that's the basis of this country, is fighting back against that kind of thing. So where I should be seeing unity, I'm seeing fracturing, whether it's to do with Judaism or not.
One of the accusations that's made by people, and many of them it's coming from the right. The left would never say this because they have their own dual loyalties. But the question of dual citizenship, I wonder where you stand on this issue. I don't have a particularly strong opinion on it because it's not something that I've considered very deeply, but I see some people in the chat are asking about it. They're saying that, that I'm not a fan of dual citizenship. Urs Mommy, she says in the chat, you are either loyal to Israel or you're loyal to the United States. Pick one. I mean, it does seem to be a problem, when we're talking about political actors, especially for example, if you're a member of Congress, and the United States does have a law that prevents like the president of the United States from not being a natural born citizen. I think a lot of people would have a problem with a president who had some kind of a dual citizenship status. How do you feel about something like that? Do you have a particularly strong opinion on this topic?
Yeah, I think on the level of just the citizenship alone, I don't really have a problem. I haven't really thought about it too deeply. I know, for example, Ann Coulter and Vivek Ramaswamy talked about what citizenship means, and loyalty to them is central to that. I'm not sure that's necessarily true. I need to do some thinking about that. I think on the issue of Israel, I think it gets a little bit sticky, because what does loyalty mean? And also, you can be pro-Israel because you are pro-America. I think that's a very subtle logical trick that a lot of people play. And they say that there are some people out there who are pro-Israel, therefore they're anti-America. That's simply not true. You can be both, but also you can disagree with the policy. I think that's the insinuation that's made, that is often, to quote the left, problematic, in that, oh, you want to give aid to Israel, therefore you're anti-America. It's like, well, you can be anti all forms of aid because you hate Israel, or because you hate giving foreign aid when we have far bigger problems at home. I think a lot of this comes down to intent.
I'm on the latter side of that. Yeah.
But unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are on the former. And so I think that's the issue for me, is that what does loyalty mean? I think there are a lot of people out there, for example, who are faking loyalty, the kind of people who put Ukraine flags in their bio, Israel flags in their bio, things like that. There is a difference between differentiating yourself. For example, I have a Star of David in my bio. mainly just to piss off anti-Semites, because right now it's a terrible environment. I want to be quite proud about who I am, what I believe. But I think there's a big difference between that and having a foreign entity's flag. Flags mean something. It means something when people wave the Palestinian flag, and to a far less offensive level, it means something when people wave the Ukrainian flag, especially in Congress, and therefore it means something if you wave the Israeli flag. And so I'd much rather be talking on, again, lines of policy rather than the virtue signaling, identity politics nonsense of I'm waving this particular flag, therefore I love everything about this country, or therefore I hate America. It's simply not that simple, but people make it so just to divide people because it's very easy politically.
Yeah, boy, this is a good conversation, Ian, and I'm glad that you're here to have it with us. And I'm grateful for you getting up so early and being so generous with your time here on this, because I would be far less offended to see the members of Congress waving an Argentinian flag in support of Javier Milei than if they were to wave a flag of Palestine in favor of Palestine, because I don't see the two as morally equivalent. But I think that the big problem is that especially on what I would term explicitly as the isolationists of the right, they see it all as the same, as all foreign nations. We want to close off not only our foreign relations with them, but we also want to close off international trade with them. That they love to equivocate or between two nations as if there is a moral difference, as if there's a moral equivalence between the what Israel stands for, or what the people in the Gaza Strip stand for, or the people of Argentina stand for. It's just not the same. But we sort of lost the nuance in this discussion because we have not only partisans and ideologues and special interests who are behind the scenes fanning the flames, but the people who tend to be the ones who are the loudest voices tend to be the most either insane, batshit insane, or the people who control the media to some extent and aren't going to allow opinions like yours and mine. Thank God we have Rumble and other platforms we can have these conversations, Ian. But on the question of how to deal with anti-Semitism here in the United States, if I were to offer a criticism of the state of Israel, that would come from me as someone who believes that Israel is not morally equivocal to their enemies in Hamas or on the Gaza Strip. It's to say that there certainly hasn't been a charm offensive from Israel, that the approach has been very much the hammer and every problem is a nail, right? Where the promise of the reason why the United States offers foreign aid to Israel ostensibly, and this is what Benjamin Netanyahu said himself, and I'll be curious how you respond to this, has been that in exchange for the weapons and the money that is offered to Israel, we're supposed to have peace and security in the Middle East. There hasn't been a lot of peace. There hasn't been a lot of security in the Middle East. I mean, at some point, beyond any kind of a special interest here, strategically, what is the interest that the United States has in Israel if the continuations of violence and the political turmoil that it brings to the United States seems to outweigh the benefits of providing Israel with the kind of foreign aid that I know that you said you've supported in the past? I don't, but I'd be curious to see how you would respond to those criticisms.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there, so I'm just going to try and meander my way through it.
Sure.
I think one is that I'm not often openly calling for foreign aid sent to Israel. I think in many ways Israel doesn't need it. I think it can be arguably advantageous to the United States, both in terms of knowledge sharing, technology sharing, the development of technology, but also keeping terrorism on one side of the planet rather than our side. But I would be perfectly happy for the United States to stop funding Israel, at least militarily. My issue is that you've got to have that view across the board. And a huge part of the reason why we don't have so-called peace in the Middle East is if we compare this to the time under Donald Trump, where he had a completely revolutionary and also obvious response to the unrest in the Middle East, in that if you don't take Iran seriously, if you don't let them have a place at the table, if you don't elevate terrorism, and then you elevate the countries in the Middle East who actually want to pursue some form of peace. This isn't saying that countries like Saudi Arabia or UAE or all these other nations are perfect, and they're certainly not. But they're not the ones advocating for the complete erasure of another country simply because Jews live there. Iran is. Countries like Syria are. Groups like Hamas and Hezbollah certainly are. And Joe Biden is also effectively funding both sides of the conflict right now. So that's really where I start to push back a little bit when people raise the issue of aid. It's like, I'd be perfectly fine in the conversation of cutting off aid if you're also saying with exactly at least as much effort that we should be cutting off aid for the other side that is going straight into the hands of quite literal terrorists. For example,
you're right.
this dock
No,
we're building for Gaza right now to drop off humanitarian aid. Wonderful if that actually gets into the hands of people who need it. It's not. It's going straight to Hamas, and Hamas are not only killing Palestinians, because Hamas are responsible for all of the bad things that happen to Palestinians almost entirely, but also we are enabling the enemy of what is supposed to be an ally, which is not how wars should be fought. And so I think a big part of this, when you talk about the hammer approach of Israel, is you've got to zoom out and understand this from a decades-long conflict, which it is, if not longer, and that Israel have really lost patience. And then you've also got the element of Israel, this modern state of Israel, being founded directly after World War II, where people didn't really care about the persecution of not only Jews, but a lot of minorities during World War II. We like to do a bit of history revisionism of, yes, the United States, yes, the UK, yes, Canada, and yes, the Soviet Union defeated the Nazis. And thank goodness for my life and the life of my family that they did. But the purpose of World War II was not to end the Holocaust. That was a wonderful side product. I mean, if you look at the actual persecution of Jews prior to World War II, the West turned a blind eye. A lot of Jews were not permitted to enter the UK. There's a lot of scandals going on there. A lot of Jews weren't permitted to enter the US, and the results were disastrous. You can't necessarily blame them because no one really knew what was going to happen long term and how horrific the Holocaust would be. But in the same way, you can't then say that the United Kingdom in 1939 and then in 1942 and onwards, the United States entered the war to end the Holocaust. They simply didn't. And so when you look at Israel, they feel alone because in many ways they are. I think that's why they are so aggressive and
I understand.
really so
and
relentless.
listen, I understand carrot and stick diplomacy, but it does appear as if it has been nothing but stick diplomacy, and there haven't been too many carrots offered. I mean, even in something like a charm offensive would be nice, because at the moment, I think that that Israel is definitely losing the propaganda wars when it comes to the United States and how American people feel. I think most people tend to feel, if they're not very strongly opposed to Israel in many ways, then they tend to be rather indifferent. The American people are somewhat isolationist from a bit of a default position. And of course, there are people in the United States who absolutely support Israel, and many of these people make up the right in the Republican Party. But that's not all of the right in the Republican Party. The dissident right of the Republican Party has taken a very strong anti-Israel tack, and I would say very anti-Semitic tack since October 7th. I think probably that was really more of the symptom than the cause. The response that we saw from so many people who identify themselves on the political right, who the snake sort of reared its ugly head, if you will. People like Candace Owens and Kanye West and others. Jake, what's his name? The fighter who got punched in the head a bunch of times, right? They say things like, "Oh, we're not anti-Semitic, we're just anti-Zionists," but you and I know that that's bullshit, right? I'm a political veteran. I've been around for 15 to 20 years. I've had plenty of conversations with these people, and I know quite well what their motives are and what they are. And when you hear people talking about, the Jews killed Jesus, and they go immediately from Israel to the question of the actual ethnic Jews, then it's not about Zionism, it's about Semitism, right? But I'm curious your thoughts about what we've seen with like the rise of the anti-Semitism on the right again. The America First Committee of the 1930s, of the interwar period between World War I and World War II, it was explicitly anti-Semitic. Henry Ford and others, they advanced conspiracy theories like the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. We're seeing these conspiracy theories return. Many of the people that I agree with, we should end the Federal Reserve. We don't agree for the same reasons. Me, because of their inflationary monetary policies and because I'd like to see competition in our monetary system. Them, because it's a cabal of international bankers, of Jewish bankers who want to control us because the Rothschilds want to make me 5 minutes late for work, every single day or what have you. But I'm curious your response to this, like Candace Owens and others, Nick Fuentes and others, who are getting a lot of traction, at least online, maybe not in the mainstream. I know a lot of no Republicans at the convention that I was at last weekend hold those political views, but it is becoming more popular on the dissident right.
Well, I think the question you're really asking is, why does anti-Semitism exist? Because the fact is, this isn't new. This has always been here. anti-Semitism is a very broad spectrum, and people, especially in the political space, love to talk about it in ways that are advantageous to them. So people on the right will go on and on about left-wing anti-Semitism or Islamic anti-Semitism or black anti-Semitism, but they'll completely ignore right-wing anti-Semitism, and vice versa. The left love to go on about white supremacist anti-Semitism, but will then cozy up to Ilhan Omar for a selfie, right? Because you don't actually care about, you don't really care about anti-Semitism, you care about using it as a weapon. So anti-Semitism has always been there, and right now there's a market for it. It's no real surprise that changes in policy on Twitter, for example, and I think changes in policy that are overall good for freedom of speech, but very bad for Jews online. Because right now we're seeing a lot of people who are directly monetizing this stuff because there is a market for it out there. And one other thing I also think ties into a little bit and why Israel is losing the propaganda war is because they will always lose the propaganda war because Jews have always lost the propaganda war. It's always so funny we're accused of controlling the media.
But Ian, don't they control the Hollywood and media?
Like, we're obviously not very good at it, and my bank account needs to have a few more zeros on it before I believe that one. But we control all these things. We control the media. We control the narrative. We control the weather, all of these things, and yet we are the nefarious victims that will always be cast aside. I think a big part of that is that, yes, we'll always be a minority. Yes, we're disproportionately successful because, like multiple other minority groups, on average, we value education and we push children into things like medicine and being a lawyer, which guess what, pay more than average. Like crazy things like that. Working hard means you earn more. Shock horror. But then people will always need a scapegoat. They'll always need someone to look down on, to have an excuse as to why they failed or why they're unhappy with their life. And Jews will always be that because we haven't even got back up to the numbers that there were before World War II. And so if you are that reliable tiny minority that is also successful, then you will always be labeled as this nefarious cause of something. And so I think right now we're seeing two different lanes. One, we're seeing the Nick Fuentes of the world who genuinely believe this. There are a lot of people who genuinely believe, at least I think it's genuine, that Jews are evil, Jews control the world, blah, blah, blah. And then you see the Candace Owens of the world who simply see this as an opportunity. I don't think they necessarily have any actual thoughts. I think a lot of it is just going towards whatever the brightest, shiniest thing in the room is that will get them the most attention. Because if you were to scratch the surface and actually ask why they believe these things, I think Nick Fuentes is a horrific, evil person, but he can actually hold a conversation as to why he believes these abjectly wrong things. And then there are people like Candace Owens, for example, who thinks the Muslim Quarter in Jerusalem is a ghetto for Muslims. There's two very different sides of this debate, but they end up in the same direction, which is hating Jews, usually for profit, which again is ironic, given that Jews are accused of being the money-grabbing fiends, and yet there's a lot of people making a lot of money off anti-Semitism right now, with also Hamas propaganda in the background, which we should never forget.
No, for sure. And it's something that, we monitor closely, especially on this show. Boy, Ian, it's so refreshing to hear your take on these things because you're so informed on this. I, for one, am tired of being lectured to about World War II by people who got Ds in history class. It's quite obvious, although I do get to get a little bit of revenge on the D students who love to tweet things like, did you know that the Allies bombed Dresden in World War II and they firebombed Dresden and they killed all the, I'm like, yes, we learned that in 10th grade, actually. I'm glad that you're just figuring it out. But of course, for much of it, it's either an attention getting ploy, like you've identified with Candace Owens and others, or it is that they're sincere beliefs, like Nick Fuentes, who think that just Hitler just didn't go hard enough on the Jews. Man, I feel like we could talk about this for hours, Ian. I'd love to have you come back again really soon. It's great to hear your voice on these things, and boy, I just wish I could be more selfish with your time, but I've got to let you go. Thanks so much for joining us. And is there anything that you'd like to share with our listeners or plug before we let you go?
Yeah, please just check out my writings. You can find my social media, IGHAWORTH. And also you can read my columns for the Washington Examiner. I also have a nationally syndicated column with creators. I'm talking about a lot of this stuff right now from what I hope is a nuanced perspective, the kind of thing we've been discussing right now. So please check it out. Even if you disagree with everything I've said, please check it out. And hopefully we can find a dialogue that is actually a way of fighting anti-Semitism rather than just riling it up on both sides for attention.
Love it. Ian, good stuff. Thank you very much for your time today. Follow him over on X, IG, HowEarth. Thank you very much for your time, Ian, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks for having me.
There you go. What do you all think of Ian? Can we get a round of applause? Yes, we can, because I hit that applause button. Appreciate you all tuning into the show. It's been a fantastic show, as usual. Great guests, great topics. So click that like before you leave. And of course, if it's your first time here, you definitely want to click the follow button so you can find us. I'm AP for Liberty. You can find me everywhere pretty much at AP for Liberty. And of course, if you're going to exit today, the show, you've got to exit through the Grift Shop, which is ap4libertyshop.com. That's AP, the number 4, ap4libertyshop.com. See Steffi's cute little bear versus man video this week? Her new show, Hustling and Homemaking. You can watch that there. Get some awesome Javier Milei Viva la Libertad Carajo merch. You can also get our awesome Norm Macdonald Commie Gobbledygook. This has been a really popular product too. Calvin Coolidge's stained glass cutting board. Isn't that beautiful? It's gorgeous, isn't it? Quest Fanning got himself one. Wouldn't you love to beat your meat on Calvin Coolidge's cutting board? I know you would. On over to ap4libertyshop.com, exit through the Grift Shop, and enjoy tomorrow's Freedom Family Friday. You know what that means. My smoking hot redheaded libertarian wifey, Steffi P, will be joining us on set, as well as my brother, Justin Peterson from Boston. It's going to be great. Thanks, Sarah for Liberty, Urs Mommy, Cecilia H, Tolly 1982, Rare Camellia, In Jam 77, Nelson 65, Frickaday, what is up, Frickaday Frick? CC23, Liberty Shindig. I'm getting ready to go to the post office box today, just right after this. Max Bang'em Hard. Great name, Max. Bitchmobile, Joni Rankin, Mighty Megatron, Drummer Goy, and so many other great friends of freedom. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys tomorrow on the Wake Up America Show at wakeupAmericaShow.com.
Populated county. Jacobs discusses the challenges of distinguishing his real-life persona from his mental. Throughout his tenure and campaign, Jacobs remains dedicated to the principles that guided his shift from entertainment to politics. His journey from WE villain to community leader underscores a deep commitment